Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate all the members of the panel being here. I think you've seen that there are occasions with some on the committee here that if you're not giving them the answer that they want, that they can use, they're just going to continue to push on you. And I just encourage you to continue speaking the truth, and you'll always stand up head and shoulders above everyone. Not surprisingly, the situation with GameStop trading has resulted in commentators and even some of my colleagues engaging in knee-jerk reactions, calling for new laws and regulations to be hastily enacted. It just seems to be a trend in Washington, D.C. to never let a crisis go to waste. Some have even spread conspiracy theories and alleged that crimes were committed before knowing what even happened. I can even testify to what was just being said is I know numbers of people, personal friends who have never invested before, but because of Robinhood and other retail platforms, many of them took the stimulus money that they received during the CARES Act, which they were still working, they didn't need, and they actually started an account and started investing. So yes, more and more people who have never invested before are now investing using these platforms. This hearing is a reminder that with complex situations, we should take time to understand what actually did or did not happen, especially with this GameStop situation. Now, the SEC is the proper authority to determine if any rules were broken, and they are looking into it. Congress has already given the SEC broad authority to oversee the capital markets, and we do not need to rush to enact even more big government regulations until that could ultimately harm the investors. Now, question, Mr. Tenev, can you remind us again why Robinhood temporarily paused trading of GameStop and other stocks?
Of course, thank you, Congressman. Robinhood paused trading temporarily, or I should say paused buying of about 13 securities on Thursday so that we could meet our regulatory deposit and collateral requirements.
Okay, so what you're saying is you were paused because you had to comply with regulations. Is that true?
Correct.
All right, so it's ironic that the people who are criticizing brokerage firms because they pause trading, which they sometimes have to do to comply with regulations, these same folks are now saying, we need to respond to this with more regulations. I would say if people don't like brokers occasionally having to pause trading, I'd suggest they look at the regulations that required it. At some point, we need to recognize that piling on more and more regulations only increases complexity and does not help investors. Question for Ms. Schulp. Despite the volatility and the frenzy of media and social media activity, it seems to me like the markets functioned as they were supposed to during this situation, and that markets are not broken. In fact, they are working well. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think most reasonable people that are listening to this would agree that there are regulations in place. The SEC has those to pause activities that could be harmful, not only to the markets, but to the individual investors. And so what I'm understanding you saying is that it did work in the way it was supposed to.
As the facts that I know now, it does appear to have worked the way it was supposed to. This is not a sign to me that the market is broken.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin, what are some of the issues that policymakers should consider in the T+2, T+1, T+0 debate? Obviously, margin requirements exist to make sure firms have enough capital to settle transactions, but faster settlement and lower margin requirements can be positive for the retail investors, and we need to balance those needs. Can you address what some of the issues are in the T2, T1, and T0 debate?
So, Congressman, I cannot profess to be an expert on these issues, but I will give you my perspectives from having been in the industry for 30 years. We started at T5. We will one day be at real-time settlement. And the question is how long does that journey take? From T2 to T1, which reduces the amount of capital required by broker-dealers to meet the needs of their customers, that reduction in capital will be meaningful, would have been very helpful to Robinhood during this period of time. Reduces counterparty risk holistically, which is good for everybody in the market. We should push for T1. As we go to same-day settlement, you now bring into question the complexity of intraday cash movement, and you bring into play the necessity for all systems to be functioning every moment of every day with no room for error. On a T1 settlement cycle,
Time has expired.